right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being on this webinar. My name is Hitendra Patel, and I'm part of the GYM Institute and the IXL Center. Our objective is to find the best methodologies, best approaches for innovation globally, and then make them accessible and available to everybody. When COVID-19 hit, we created a think tank made up of people from all over the world, and we looked quickly for ideas and solutions that will help companies get out of this COVID-19 crisis. So let me just remind you what happened. COVID-19 hit across the globe very quickly, and there was one strategy that everybody pursued: flattening the curve. Flattening the curve to stop people from getting sick in the quantities in excess of the hospital beds that we had. And that was a challenge. So how could we actually avoid our hospitals from getting filled up was to flatten the curve. Flatten the curve means social distancing. What social distancing meant was you could not be next to each other. And the very strategies that we had put in place to make our businesses efficient and effective were now basically being asked under pressure. Our customers could not come to where we were. Our employees could not work next to each other. Social distancing, though it was very effective in saving the hospitals, they put a huge impact on our economy. Whether it's companies, institutions, universities, colleges, everywhere, things began to shut down. So essentially what we had to do was figure out a way to solve these things. But behind all this was this fear and distrust. Fear and distrust is really part of our society right now. You have to wear masks. If you don't wear a mask, people don't like you. People might yell at you. It's the right thing to do. If you look like you're from certain parts of the world, you might not be appreciated. Right now, Americans are not welcome in any country on the planet because we've got the most number of people sick out there. And we are worried about taking this disease back into our own homes where we have got loved ones like parents, grandparents, and others. So we are in a new normal. And this new normal is going to stay with us for a while until we get vaccines. And vaccines are not very near or available ubiquitously across the globe. We need to get to 7 billion vaccines in a very short time. That's going to take about at least a year to 2 years to get there. So we are in a world where there is fear, there's distrust, there's a new world we live in. And as a result of it, our economies, businesses are kind of not all businesses are working at high gear. So the shutdowns and slowdowns are causing some issues. We need to get back to business as usual. And if we don't get back soon, we will continue seeing job losses, and we've seen that, particularly in restaurants and hotels and the service industries. But we are beginning to see that also in other industries as the trickle effect of a slowed down economy plays its role. Indirectly, job losses result in poverty. Poverty results in crime. Job losses, ultimately, if we cannot recover those losses of jobs, business failures. And if those business failures fail, then industries begin to collapse. And then the social unrest from the crime. We are seeing a lot of social unrest in the US, and particularly, we begin to see cracks in our society, which we could cover up with being a wealthy society. But when the wealth goes away, suddenly Black Lives Matter becomes the prevalent issues, or issues about the wealth gap, and other things begin to become more clear that everything doesn't look as fair as it used to be. And those things eventually create breakdowns in supply chains on the industry side, and eventually, yes, revolutions. And we don't want to get there. So the objective of innovation, objective of every one of you, is to use innovation as the way to avoid this. And how do we get our business back up and running, start making money, start creating jobs, and make sure that we move our economy in a positive direction. And that's the challenge. Each one of you is tasked with innovation. How are we going to make innovation and use innovation to get there? So what we've been doing is essentially asking the following questions. What kind of businesses are suffering, and what businesses are seem to be doing fine? And we created a framework. And the framework is basically, there were businesses which have got either a lot of touch or intensity of touch between the customers, between the employees, between the suppliers. When touch intensity is high or touch intensity is low. And wherever there's low touch, there's positive impacts. Wherever there's high touch, there's a negative impact on the business. COVID-19 says social distancing. So that's one dimension look at your business. The other dimension is in this environments where we aren't moving around, we are staying at home, and the at-home revolution is happening. Are you still essential? Are the things that you were providing before still essential or not? And this framework will allow us to think through what is really going on. And the reason I want to emphasize the importance of this framework is even though we are all in the same storm called this pandemic, some people are doing really well. So we aren't all in the same boat. It seems that we are in different types of boats, and some boats are getting hammered by this pandemic. Other boats are surging forward and doing really well. So on the top right-hand corner, if you are right now with very low touch intensity and you've got a product or a service that is really essential, carry on with your business, drive demand, and go make money. And we know these companies, and these companies are like Zoom, what we're using right now in this particular presentation. We know Netflix, we know Facebook, we know all these people who are digitally out there already, where there's low touch intensity, they're doing really well. And the services are really essential because they're connecting us to each other to do more. On the other side, if you do have a lot of touch and you're still essential, then you need to very quickly think about adapting some of your processes and making them safer. And what do you mean by safe processes? Processes that make your customers feel safe, your employees feel safe, and your suppliers feel safe. This is all the 6 feet apart rules that you're hearing about and beyond. How do we continue working next to each other and making sure we can deliver things to each other? Meat packing is a great example of that. The meat packing plants, we want to eat protein, we want to eat food, and those plants are essential. We want to eat that food. However, there's a high density of people standing next to each other in the factories, and as a result, people get sick and they shut down. So those guys have to really spend a lot of time on how to make sure their processes are safe to be able to keep people working, whether it's your employees, whether it's your suppliers or your customers. Top left-hand corner, your product is still needed, but the way you produce it or the way you sell it, the way you deliver it is somehow unsafe. Is that the boat you are in? Alternatively, you could be in a different boat. And in this boat, you have low touch intensity to a large extent. You figure that one out, but somehow your products and services are not essential. They used to be essential, but you have somehow dropped from the top right-hand corner to the bottom right. Somehow or other, you are not able to produce this thing for a low cost, or your customer demand has gone away. And here you will need to pivot some parts of your business to either drive your cost down or find new ways to find your customers, because your customers have disappeared. And the pivot has to happen inside your business. And then the last one is, of course, the worst situation could be in. You're in a boat where there is high touch intensity and your products and services are just not essential. And here you need to reinvent your business, you've got to transform your business. So the question for you essentially is at this very moment, which boat are you in? And depending on which boat you're in, then you have a strategy, choices, very specific choices you can make on what is your innovation strategy. Is your innovation strategy about adapting? Is it about pivoting? Or is it about transforming by reinventing your business? And if you can very quickly figure that out, then you can now start focusing your scarce resources of innovation people, your ideas onto those particular problems. So, how do you do this? Well, the first one is you got to do a quick audit. And a quick audit to say, which one is my big problem? Is it adapt, is it pivot, or is it transform? Now, the audit has to be done not by you. I want to be clear about that. As much as you are the innovation director, the innovation manager, you are the innovation person, you can't be the one who decides whether you're going to be doing adapt, pivot, or transform. This is a CEO initiative. It's a senior executive initiative, and they've got to decide which is our strategic thrust. Do we need to adapt the business? Do we need to pivot the business or transform the business? It's a choice. You might have to do all three, but ideally, it's far easier to choose one over the other. So an audit with the senior executives is needed to choose which one you have to do. And if you choose it, now you can take your scarce resources and focus them on one of the three buckets on the right-hand side: adapt, pivot, or transform. And this is what you want to do at this moment. Why? Because we're not all in the same boat. The conversation of pandemic and the conversations of the slowdown is not the same for every company, and it's not the same for every industry. Let me go in more detail about each of these particular approaches on how would you take innovation to solve it. So if you are required to do adapt safe processes, and you feel you are in that boat, your customers, your employees, or your suppliers are really touching each other, very close to each other, and your products have high need, then you need to make your organization safe. Your ideas are mainly about fixing your internal processes to make it safe. This is not about new businesses. It's not about new ideas for growth. It's about internally making your company safe. In this particular system, how would you do it? Well, first of all, you have to map all your stakeholders. The stakeholders are customers, stakeholders, employees, and suppliers. And you got to make sure that each one of them feels safe to come to work and work next to each other. The thing here is 6 feet apart does not work. Be very clear about that. If you make everybody 6 feet apart, then what's the issue? You've spread them out. Now you don't have enough space. You're no longer effective. You're no longer efficient. The very strategies of making your business effective, efficient, low cost is thrown out of the window by the 2 meters apart, the 6 feet apart strategies. It doesn't work. You can't have lines spread out. You can't have universities with 1/3 of the students sitting in a classroom. You can't have a restaurant where 1/3 of the people can't sit in the restaurant. All those things don't work. And you might open for business, but you're not going to make money. So 6 feet apart by itself is not the answer. How do you do this? Well, the way to understand what's going on is you map all your customers or your employees or your suppliers, and you do the journey maps. On the bottom left-hand corner, this is a journey map of somebody who enters a restaurant, for example, and they actually follow the customer all the way through the process, from the point they enter to the point they sit down, to the point they order, to the point they eat, and the point they pay. And then you map it, and where are the reds, greens, and yellows? Very straightforward approach, but map it systematically, because it's not only about you feeling it's safe, you got to make sure you can communicate to your customers it's safe. And wherever you get a yellow or a red warning, now you got to do some brainstorming. Ideas to make it safer. Use idea scale software, use other techniques to generate ideas on what are our ideas to make it safe. And those ideas then on implementation will make it safe for the customer to come back to work or come back to eat. Today, there are libraries of solutions which have been created over the last 9 months, 8 months. Remember this much, COVID-19 started almost in October, November in China. And since then, solutions have been developed in Hong Kong, in Korea, in Italy, and all the solutions are being documented. The solutions are not about 6 feet apart. These solutions are about touchless, things you don't touch. There's solutions about do-it-yourself, outsourcing a part of your business so that people do it themselves. These are digital solutions. There are solutions of protection, barriers, physical barriers, mechanical barriers, robotic solutions, as well as training and cleaning. And so people walk around with certified clean training. These databases have been accumulated to do what you have to do. The methodology is follow the approach of one customer or an employee or a supplier through the day of their life. And in the mapping, find out where you have got yellow and reds. And for whatever those yellow and reds, brainstorm for ideas or look at databases of solutions, but don't try and invent solutions. Don't try and create solutions because those solutions exist. You need to go fast, you need to implement quickly, and you need to get back to business as soon as possible. So what is the approach? Do a COVID-19 risk assessment tool. Identify all the stakeholders. We told them map and assess the journey maps. Look at the database of solutions or brainstorm solutions and select the ones that are best for you. Make sure it is not just 6 feet apart separations. Don't make it such that it is expansion of time. You need solutions which are use your foot instead of touching buttons. Different solutions, digital, robotics, and other stuff, and then get them implemented as soon as you can. What you need is a standard at the end, an implementation plan, investment plan, and communication plan. 3-step process to getting these things done. As an example, we've done this with hotels, we've done this with restaurants. Business John, a customer for this hotel, he mapped his journey from the point he enters the hotel, reception area, checks in, room stay, conferences, restaurants, and you map it. And then you look at the COVID risk. The COVID risk shows up, and the COVID risk shows you what's good or bad about certain things that he's doing. And now once the COVID risks are clear, organizationally we are aligned to the risks. Now we start thinking about solving them. You look for solutions which are digital. You generate a whole bunch of different solutions for each one of the ones which are red. And you might have 2 or 3 solutions for each one of them. And then choose the one that makes sense for you, implement it, and off you go. And use this very visual as a way to communicate to the client, to the employee. Look, we understand you very well as a customer. We know what your needs are. We know what you're fearful of. And here are the solutions we put in place. Come on back to work. Come back as a customer. Let's get back to business. And that's what Adapt is all about. Some of your companies, not all of you, are needing to adapt. Many of your companies may have a majority of your company up and running, but there are still parts which requires adaptation. So this is the approach. Journey maps, identify fears, based on fears, find solutions, many, don't try and invent them, find them from databases, find them from Googling, and just buy them and implement them ASAP. The second part of this whole thing is, look, if you're sitting in the bottom right-hand corner, in the pivot section, you're basically have some methods of low intensity, you figured it out, but because you have low intensity, maybe you destroyed the very dynamics of your business and the demand that you used to have has gone away. Best example of that at a high level is a restaurant. Restaurants are beginning to spread the tables out. But by spreading the tables out doesn't mean they increase revenue. They just basically decrease the revenue by 1/3. So they got to figure out new ways to drive demand and new ways to make people sit closer to each other or get them sitting maybe in a parking lot or somewhere else. They need to pivot. Pivot is staying close to your core business and changing a few things. How does that work? So let's look at a restaurant example as a thing. You'll audit it. You look at who do you serve, how do you deliver the products, what's your offering, how do you produce it. In the case of a restaurant, it'll be as simple as, look, hey, we produce our food in the restaurant or the kitchen. We offer pizza, and they come in to sit and eat, and the market used to be everyone. You do a quick audit of this thing. I'm making this thing very trivial, just for the purpose of example. You do a quick audit of this thing and say what's good or bad. And you say, well, we can continue producing. It's not an issue. So our production is easy. Our offering seems to be a little off right now. People don't want to eat pizza as much as they used to for whatever reasons. And our eating section is completely down because we don't have enough tables because they've been spaced out. And the market has changed. All the old people are gone. The old people are staying at home. They're fearful of COVID-19 and they don't want to come. And young people have disappeared because the moms have basically locked down every teenager because they're worried the teenagers might go out there and come back with COVID-19 disease. So now we get an idea of where to focus our energy. Continue producing out of the restaurant. Maybe we might want to tweak the offering a little bit, but that delivery thing, it's a problem. We got to figure out a new way to deliver something, and eating by itself is not working. And with the customers, we got to change something. So there's a tool which basically says, okay, what are our options? And the options are generated. Say, what else could we do? What else can we do? And that's options. And you might continue, maybe saying, hey, look, maybe we should not produce food in our restaurant. Let them cook it at their own house. Maybe on the offering, let's add a few more things, whether it's beer, buffalo wings, or on the delivery stuff, let's now do home delivery or pickup. Let them pick it up, or maybe we'll sell at a convenience store. On the market, we know we used to be everybody, but now let's think about really targeting baby boomers, because baby boomers are the ones who have now we lost them out of the market. Or maybe we'll just target the invincibles. Most of you people who are young, healthy, and strong, and are quite comfortable if you do get sick and you're going to recover quickly. But let's choose another segment and focus on them and think about what we want to do. And then you think about the pivots. Hey, we'll target baby boomers, but we're going to fix pivot will be home delivery. And then we'll produce pizza or restaurant. Or we'll target Invincibles. And we'll add in the pizza and beer because Invincibles would like to sit in there and maybe they'll stick around longer and spend more money. So again, I'm trivializing the approach of thinking just for the purpose of explaining. What do you have to do? You have to look at your current business, find where the weaknesses are, focus on where the weaknesses are, and on those weaknesses, now do your brainstorming, your ideation is what else can we do? What else can we do? What else can we do? And generate a whole bunch of options. And these are the options over here of what else can we do. And on this what else, now you may keep most of the things the same and change two things. We'll keep the restaurant the same and the pizza the same, but we're going to change the home delivery and target baby boomers. And with that precision, you now begin to drive more demand and you're able to actually get the pizza to the customer. What has happened because of COVID-19 is there is an at-home revolution happening. The at-home revolution essentially means that people are getting happy and they're really enjoying the time they're spending at home. And they really want things to come to them. And if things are going to come to them, this is why Amazon is doing so well. They're bringing things to your house. So anybody who can bring things to people and anybody who can inform people that you're open for business and you have services are the ones which are going to win. So this is all about delivery and it's all about getting to the customer and pivoting on that side. You may have to pivot your products and your offerings, and you may have to pivot the way you produce things also. But the main message over here is identify where the weaknesses are, think about what else, what's next, and off you go. Again, a systematic approach, map the weaknesses, identify pivot options. On those pivot options, find the ones, the options which you connect together, which gives you the big impact for the lowest effort. And I keep on emphasizing this. During pandemic, if any of you are asking for money from your CEOs and from your businesses, they're going to say no to you. At this moment, people are trying to conserve cash and they're being careful. So you guys need to think carefully about the ideas that you want to implement. And the ones that you can implement need to be easy and fast and low cost. But they must make the impact. And once the impact comes, then you can ask for more money. But if you go out there this time, in this climate that we are in, you are at risk if you're going to ask for money for your ideas. So the guidance remains. Don't waste too much time looking for solutions. Look for solutions which already exist. Focus on benchmarking. Focus on ideas which exist, solutions which exist, and find a way to bring them in-house as soon as you can. For all of them, you need an implementation plan, and you need to make sure there's an investment plan and a very clear communication plan that we are up for business. Adapt, pivot. Okay, so this is the pivot section. Now, I'm watching my time over here because I want to take some questions from you guys. If it's not adapt or pivot, then this is the reinvent your business side of it, which we call transform. Transform essentially means that you are in trouble. The very products that you have are not going to work. The very services that you have are no longer in demand. Best examples of that is if you watch football or basketball, the stadiums are empty. The stadiums are completely empty, and they're trying to figure out how to get those businesses up and running. The NBA, the NFL is one example. Conferences and conventions are another ones. They can't continue running business as they used to. They need to transform. They need to rethink what they were doing. They really need to change the value proposition. They need to change the way they produce things. They've got to change everything. Otherwise, they aren't going to last very long. This is what you guys were also tasked to do. Most of you who are in innovation were asked to come up with next growth ideas, the next big idea for your business. Well, that's on the bottom left-hand side. And this is a good time when companies are in this situation that they will actually start listening to you, saying, oh my God, we have to look at the trends. We have to look at market needs. We have to think of business models. We're going to think all kinds of really interesting things to be able to come up with something which is different and better. On that bottom left-hand side, the good news for all of us on this thing called transform and reinvent is we know companies are kicking butt at this time. All the names I mentioned away with this Netflix, Amazon, Microsoft, PayPal, Tesla, I've got no idea what is the connection between all of them, but somehow they figured out that during this economy called the pandemic, they're going to make money. The stock market today is doing better than at the beginning of the pandemic. We are already up. We dropped in the stock market. We're back up again. But 20% of the companies in the stock market are generating all the profits today. Those 20% are whom we can learn from. What they have is digital. All of them went digital much earlier, almost 5 years ago, 10 years ago, before this pandemic hit. And boy, were they better prepared. And as a result, they're cashing in. So we can borrow ideas from these winning companies and look at what our core business is, and look at our core business and say, which components of this can we really accelerate digitization and figure that out. This is much more complicated because it may require to change your customer. It may require to change your channel. It may require to even challenge and fight with the people inside your company, because inside the company, they might say, that's not how we do it. And it may require to look for new suppliers. This is a big change. It is not a change of one function or one part of the business. It's a change across the value chain. The whole value chain is impacted when you try and create a new business idea that is going to be relevant in this particular climate. And therefore, as you think about the big idea that you want to do, we often talk about value proposition for the customer. What I want to encourage you to think about is there's a value proposition for each of the stakeholders. The channel partner must have a value proposition. The company must have a value proposition, meaning other people in the company. Suppliers must have a value proposition. And you have to think much broader than the narrow things that design thinking and other things talk about. What's a customer value proposition? This is a business value proposition. What's the value proposition across the value chain? And it's a little harder and a little bit more challenging. But this is what you guys are all trained for, and this is what you would like to do also. In here, the approach is different. You will have to have a different sort of mindset because you have to create the whole business. So to do this, your concept has to be converted into artifacts as quickly as possible. You have to create brochures, prototypes, find partners, practice your sales pitches, create sales booths, get your purchase order. How do you do it? It's teams. You can't do this alone. This is teams. People across your company in marketing and purchasing and manufacturing and finance. And you guys have to work as teams, and you got to learn to experiment and iterate. You know how to do that. The rest of the company doesn't. You have to think win-win. You know how to do that, but the rest of the company doesn't. You have to go faster, agile, scrum, all the tools I tell you about. You know how to do that also, but the rest of the organization doesn't. You have to think bigger because you know all big ideas eventually become very small when you implement them. Implementation requires risk mitigation, and the idea gets smaller as you take risk out of it. And ultimately, it's not about talking, it's about doing. And that's what you have to do. This is a harder part of the thing. This requires teams supported by the CEO. This requires ideas and concepts which are accepted by the executive team to say, yes, that's what the future is. And it requires often seniority and access to the senior level people to make sure two things are happening. One, budgets and resources. And two, their attention and support and monitoring. And if those things are happening, things will happen. So it requires seniority. So in your team, whoever you are, make sure you got senior people supporting you, or you are spending time with the senior executives to tell them what's going on over here to help them. So again, very simple, map the current business, find what's wrong with it, identify new opportunities, the tools for doing these things, and ultimately business model, innovations, and everything else that goes with that. So, question for you guys, do you know what boat you're on? Are you prepared to invest to win? If you know which boat you're in, if you're in the top left, the bottom right, or the bottom left, each one of them require a mindset for investment and effort. If you are in the top left, it's very much about incremental processes, changes, and improvements. It's process improvements. It's efficiencies, new efficiencies in the new normal. That's the curve for number one. Those solutions can be done very quickly within a month, and they can turn around into profit for the company right now. The investments are lower, and the time to finish is faster. The ones on the bottom right are called incremental. Again, they can be done within the resources of the organization by the people on the team, but it takes a little longer than the ones for efficiency. And they create more value for you, because not only will it allow you to get back to business, it may start driving new demand for a lower cost. And therefore, it's more valuable than those which are on the efficiency side. The bottom left requires patience and persistence. The investments are longer, it takes longer, and the results, if you do well and you think smartly, they tend to be breakthrough type projects, and they completely change your company and have different conversations. That's what I wanted to share with you. At the high level, in this pandemic, we are all in a different boat. We have to choose understand which boat we are in. And based on that, there are strategies on how to start fixing things. Trouble is, each of the strategies, whether it's adapt, pivot, or reinvent, requires different levels of investments and different amount of intellectual rigor and research. On efficiency, it's all about benchmarking, getting resources within your teams, and doing it. It's about just do it as quickly as possible. You'll get support for that, and it'll be very fast to do, and you shouldn't spend too much time talking about it and making it the topic of your organization. The incremental ones will require you to go beyond yourself, but beyond into other departments and involve other departments, other functions. It will require some more investment. It requires managers to free up resources of other people. It requires a team. And you'll get good results of incremental. But the expectation shouldn't be groundbreaking. It'll keep us alive. It'll keep us successful during this crisis. The breakthrough ones, which is the one which I enjoy working on, is transformative. It's creating new businesses, creating the next big thing for your company. This is what most innovation departments are supposed to be doing when there's not a pandemic. They should have been investing prior to the pandemic into ideas which are getting ready to launch, and should have made you bulletproof and resilient in this crisis. If you haven't done it, well, it's going to take time, and the answers are not going to be overnight. Hopefully, there are answers already somehow in your pipeline. Now you can accelerate them. But in order for them to launch, you need your CEO's attention. You need his or her money. You need the resources from other departments and outside of your company with suppliers and channels. And so the complexity is greater, and as a result, seniority in your team is needed. With that, I hope I've given you some guidance. I hope I've given you a framework to talk and think about innovation and ideation. For each one of this quadrant that you might be in, you need ideas. And I believe this is where your relationship with IdeaScale can help you with sourcing, finding solutions and ideas for specific problems. I've told you where the problems are. I've suggested how you can link them to your executive teams. And I wish you good luck and best wishes in getting your companies, to start innovating if they're not, and to start implementing if they haven't, but to start capturing the value of your innovations as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hitendra. I find this framework really, really useful in helping people understand where their position is. And by the way, I think you should be able to share video now, so we could say hello to you maybe during the Q&A if you want to try that again.
I'm here. There you go.
There we go. And now I'll say hello too. So thank you very much for sharing this today. We already had some people asking some questions as you were going through, and I've copied some of them here, and I'll share them with you. But the first one that's come in is, how do we determine which boat we are really in, or convince somebody which boat they're really in? The example they gave is when COVID started, their prospects needed to solve problems with people like us because they halted projects because we have so many problems to solve right now. So we think we are critical during this time, but clients identified them as optional because of revenue concerns. So is this just a marketing or value prop problem, or do you need to help people see themselves as essential or not essential?
Yeah, so each business has to ask, and let me stay with something which we all can understand: restaurants, right? In the restaurant business, were the ones who got hit the worst. So was the food Thai food? My family loves Thai food. We stopped eating Thai food for the last 3 months, for the first 3 months of the crisis. We didn't go out anymore. Right? So Thai food just went. We still valued it, we still wanted it, but we weren't able to go to them. Now the restaurants didn't know that. So if they had pivoted, for them on the bottom right hand side, if they had pivoted to home delivery much sooner, if they had pivoted to the point where they were on my phone and saying, "Hey, are you hungry for Thai food?" So it was in my face. Those two things was what they had to do as soon as possible. And they didn't do it. And therefore, for 3 to 4 months, they lost revenue and they were in crisis mode. Now, on the other side, they had to follow government rules and all that to say, our restaurants have to close down. But they could have opened up through curbside. They could have opened up in other ways to do things. And they could have said, what are our 6 feet apart solutions? And they could have come up with those solutions much earlier. So you have to keep on checking your value proposition. It does change. The market conditions change value propositions. But there was also the other issue was, even though the value proposition is there, sometimes you have lost that connection on the channel. So the person you were talking to in a company, certainly that person is no longer available because he or she is fighting some fire somewhere else. So they have changed their value proposition. So they got 3 other things, and you are now number 3 on the list on value versus when you were number 1. So you need to understand where you are on that. And if you have dropped down on it, then now you got to ask the question, how do I get back in the number 1 position on the value proposition? Do I give a discount? Do I postpone my payment? Do I find a different business model? Do I bundle something in? And so you have to shift on the value proposition on that. The best way to do this, again, remains is, if you do journey maps, you talk to your customers and you ask them, it's the only way to do it. For you to guess what's going on, you're going to be wrong. It's better to get it out of them and talk to them. Innovation will remain, that as much as we go to digital 4.0 and we go to innovation 4.0 and all this stuff, we will still value the face-to-face type of interaction to see people's eyes, emotions, and from there, double click to the real reasons why people might not want what you are trying to offer, or what is it that they really need.
We had a question come in about some of those communications challenges, actually. So what about if you adapt to a safer work environment or something? What about the communications that are necessary to get your employees to trust that, since so much of this is about perception?
So there are 2 things here. First, you got to be careful. There is a legal liability which we have no idea what it's going to be soon. Companies are saying you must come back to work, right? Well, what if I have a grandfather or grandmother at home, and somehow or other one of my workmates brings COVID-19 into the office, and I take it back to my grandmother and she dies? And I might get so angry that I might sue the company. We don't have any of those legal issues right now figured out, and the lawsuits are just about to come out. So be very thoughtful about forcing people to show up. Please keep it optional right now. That might be a safer way to do it. But what you can do is make it a choice. These are the unsafe factors that we had. Here's the safety things that we have done, and communicate them and saying, what else do we need to do to make you feel comfortable? However, remember this, option to coming to work every day is yours. Keep that out there always as your get out of jail card. But you need to work together. They need to see that you are assessing the whole journey, every step from going to the bathroom to lunch, to share, to the coffee machine or whatever you're doing. You need to make sure that the journey maps are co-created. We did this with a big hardware store, like a Home Depot. And the Home Depot mapped everything in the Home Depot from customers and everything else. And they were surprised by all the different issues employees had that the people, the consultants working on the problem didn't even realize. And so each one of you and each person you confront walking towards you, they have a different level of fear. And we aren't them, and we can never get into them. And so involve and co-create solutions is my guidance. And you'll be surprised the solutions are there. It's not like we can't solve this COVID-19 thing. We can work next to each other with digital. We can work next to each other with robotics. We can do lots of things. It's not that we can't do it. It's just we're being lazy with the 6 feet apart solution.
Well, and I think it's a good point too. Like, whoever we are, we don't need to go back into our teams and solve this on our own. Like, the more you involve people in the process of solving these problems, the more people are going to trust it, and the better these solutions will be too. You mentioned, of course,
tools exist, Jessica. Tools exist to crowdsource and make them feel that they're part of the co-creation and communicate. Well done, thank you for that. They exist. So it's not like it's impossible. We the one we did with this big hardware store, there was a digital platform which allowed us to collect ideas together, and then we had to communicate them back and forth. And it's very fast. And idea scale type of technologies are perfect for this type of things right now, because people need to feel they were heard. They need to feel they were heard.
We also had a question about leadership. You mentioned, of course, the importance of either having leadership on your team or being able to win leadership to your side. Is there some data that's the most important or compelling to present in order to get them to start thinking about these breakthrough opportunities?
So you have to understand that your senior executive is very busy. Let's be very clear about that. And you have maybe 1 to 3 minutes really to say something that they will understand. And meanwhile, you've been working 3 days, 3 months on something, and you want to say everything. And you've got to get it down to 3 minutes. You got to get it down to something that is so simple that he understands, not because he's dumb or she's dumb. It's because they are really smart people and they're doing so many things. So that's the first high-level conversation. So what turns on a CEO? What kind of conversations makes them saying, I want to listen some more, right? And usually it's about helping them with their issues, not your issues, not anybody else's issues. So you need to get close and understand what their issues are. So you can ask them, are we losing money because we can't get our business up and running in terms of adapt? Or are we losing money because we've got it safe, but we don't have a demand or our cost is too high? Or is it because all those things are failing and we need some new business ideas? Ask them. So I've tried to frame this problem purely from a financial and a business perspective, which is what the CEO's responsibility is. And his or her responsibility is to make sure we protect the present and create a future. It's both. And when you talk to most CEOs, some of them are much more about protecting the present, and some of them are able to do protect and create a future, and some of them are all about creating a future. 90% of them are protecting the present, right? And so you got to give them what makes them happy. And don't go talk about something that doesn't make them happy, because their eyes will glaze over and they'll say, I hate talking to you, because you're talking about something I'm not interested in. So again, whose issue is innovation? You might say it's all of us, but the one who's supposed to drive the growth of the company is your CEO. And that CEO is worried. Ask what he or she is worried about. Double click on that with solutions for those worries. Stay close to the need of your organization. And the person who's worried most is the senior executive. You touch that button, that CEO will say, let's get a coffee and let's meet every week, 1 hour. That CEO, you really connect with the CEO, he or she will ask you what kind of budget do you need. They'll indicate people for your projects, and things will happen very quickly. I was that person at Motorola. Every single time I would find time to talk briefly with the CEO to understand what his or her needs were. I would listen to the annual report or anytime the CEO talked in public, and I would count which words he would use the most. And the words which he used the most gave me indication of what was most important to him or her. And from there, I would try and identify what the issues were, and I would send an email quickly saying, here are the key topics. Which of these are the most important for you? Can I get a coffee with you? At 7 o'clock in the morning. Not at 9 o'clock, because the CEOs, they come much earlier and they work much later. And there, you can't go in the middle of the day when the schedule is already done. So they deliberately come an hour early to try and get all that email out of the way. Find times with them, but understand your senior executive and work with his or her schedule, and then be the go-to person and deliver results. Please don't ask for money. Offer solutions and offer partners who can help you solve the problem. But if you go ask for money, you're just like every other person on the planet. Not creative. I need somebody who says, I've got ideas and I've got ways to get it done for a very low cost, very fast. Wow, I want to hire you. I want you on my team. That's what the CEO wants, on innovation from you guys.
What a great scrappy method for defining what's most interesting to a CEO is to listen to their all hands, messages and then write down the words that occurred the most. I love that. We've had some questions from people about how to do this on their own. Can people, these subject matter experts, take what they've seen here and be able to do this on their own? Or can they work with you? Do you help them make that case? Do they need additional tools?
So each one of this methodology has got a course and a step-by-step process. And they're kind of straightforward. If you read it, it should be understandable. Nothing over here is genius. It's just discipline. I want to be clear. It's discipline, right? The methodology of innovation today has become a common language. That's not the aha. The real aha is, are you able to start and are you able to finish systematically, quickly? It's discipline. So discipline is on your side. And there are two ways to get discipline. One is to get your CEO's attention to the start and finish. We all get things done when the CEO says start, and this is the day to finish something. Are you disciplined with the team? Or do you need somebody from the outside, like a consultant, who can start and finish things? Consultants are powerful in starting and finishing. That's why you hire consultants, because they only do one thing and they get that stuff done. You got 50 things going on, therefore you're distracted in the multiple things. Consultants are powerful in that sense. The discipline, how will you get discipline? If you're self-discipline, no problem. If you've got a CEO who stays on top of you, no problem, right? So the first is discipline. Ask yourself if you have that. Number two is teams. Do you have a team? You have a team to do the work. And if you got only yourself, then you need to find a team that is recruiting softly and having people work with you because you're such a great person. Or you get dedicated teams from the CEO to get you that. A team sometimes the methodology so all these tools are digitized also. So if you're good at just reading and executing methodology, no problem. Get the manual. If you can't do that, then the software tools to help you get these things done for a relatively cost-effective way. The tools which you can use to do that. And the last one over here, I think, is we've got teams, methodology, discipline. Is a focus on results. It's a focus on results, not activities. I'm busy. Look, we did ideation. So what? Thousands of ideas. Who cares about that? Oh, I'm working on 7 projects. Good for me. Well done. No, I want to know what money and what results did you get for us. And so you keep the eye on that. And every meeting and everything is saying, where's the results? And so discipline on starting and finishing, but the results is the part of that. Yes, we can work with Jessica, and we can work together to. If you guys you want to have a conversation, certainly help you think through that. I believe there's a do it yourself. I believe there is do it for me, and there's something in between.
We had one more question here, which is about, with the people that you've used this framework with so far, what have been the key things that you've learned from teaching it to other people and from them using it? Where are the biggest challenges, that kind of thing?
So on the adapt, and there are different aha moments. People had different experiences on each one of them. On the adapt one, people were surprised at the degree of fear that was existing in the organization and the customers and employer suppliers. They didn't appreciate it. And they were like, look, what's the big deal? And usually the ones who were saying what's the big deal were usually healthy or higher risk takers or living alone, and they didn't have the same environments. And so they were surprised. And then they began to understand that this is much more complicated than we thought it was. It's not just 6 feet apart. It's even it's about sharing. It's even if somebody is talking and a little bit of food flies out of their mouth, oh my God, what goes to the other person's mind? All kinds of crap. There's so much junk in our head. And so that was the surprise for them, that there was so much in the adapt side. And therefore, if you're in innovation, you now really realize when they say we must understand human needs, because this was a need. We don't focus on fear, but fear is the most powerful need, because we act irrationally. We freeze, we fight, or we flight, right? So those are 3 things that came out of it. So the outcome of adapt was all about the human need on fear and understanding it better than ever before. On pivot, it was much more different. On pivot, it was truly about all this other stuff. Investments being made by Facebook and all these other great companies are marketing in front of you, and we spend half of our time on Zoom meetings and another half of the time watching Netflix or Instagram. So though everybody says let's go digital, digital does not mean it's easy to get in front of somebody. So the cost of getting in front of somebody has to be very creative. And so the solutions people came up with on Pivot was always digital. Oh, we need a website, it's more social media, it's more SEO. Yeah, but does that make a difference? And so they had to think much more creatively beyond the obvious statements of, hey, we need to use social media. And that was the Pivot situation. Is here the human need that we had to communicate was, I like Thai food, so it was taste, flavors. I want to stay at home. I want convenience and all those kind of things. Pivot was all about convenience on things that we have always wanted. It wasn't fear. Different sort of delivery, but convenience was the word, and make my life easy at home. Okay. On reinvent your business, what we saw was 2 things. Companies which are really in the bottom left-hand corner were fearful. They were scared, and they're beginning to cut and fire people. And as a result, it's much harder to work in because they don't have good revenues coming in right now, and they need to cut cost. And at the same time, they're going to try and figure out a new business that they can pivot into, completely transform into. And so here, we had to provide and literally hold the hands of people saying, guys, this ship is sinking. It is sinking. But you guys can jump, but there's nowhere to jump right now in COVID-19. There's no jobs out there. So where are you going to jump to? So you need to be on this boat, and you got to figure it out. And it's literally the same as the guy who went to Mexico from Spain. You have to burn your boats that you came in, and you got to stay in Mexico. You're not going back to Spain. Same story is in this one here. It's like you can't keep on looking backwards. You have to look forward, and you got to create your future. And it's going to be uncertain. It's going to be ambiguous. And in here, it's a different sort of comfort and a different type of communication needed, because it's the people who are scared. The opportunities, just so you know, are tremendous. It wasn't about ideas. There were so many ideas we can do in the future. But it was the security people needed Will I still have a job next week and next month and next year? Very different. I hope that's helpful.
That is very helpful, and it's taken us all the way to the end of the webinar. So I just want to take the opportunity again to thank you for sharing this framework. I think it's really useful as people are trying to think about what's next for them in the wake of COVID-19. It's so good to know that you have these resources available to people. Thank you so much again.